The weight of weakness. The day we learned fear. Before we jump into the story, drop a quick hi in the comments. It helps YouTube share this with more sci-fi fans like you. I'd love to know who's watching from around the galaxy. I still remember the day humans arrived at Station Vex 7. We thought they were a joke. The collective had been exploring space for 12,000 cycles, and in all that time, we'd never encountered a species so physically inadequate. They couldn't breathe methane like the cryll. They lacked the armored shells of the Tarkans. Their bones broke easier than ceramic glass. My name is Helrix, and I served as a security analyst aboard Vex 7, the largest trade station in the outer quadrants. When the human delegation docked at Bay 17, I was the one monitoring their biosignatures. The readings made me laugh out loud. "Captain Vorith," I called across the command deck. "You need to see this. The humans register as threat level 0.3. That's lower than a glimmer moth." Captain Vorith, a massive Tarkon whose shell could deflect plasma fire, rumbled with amusement. His voice sounded like grinding stone. "Let me guess. They need life support just to breathe our air?" "Worse," I replied, studying the data streams. "Their gravity tolerance is limited. Their temperature range is narrow. One of them is carrying medicine just to survive basic station conditions." I shook my head. How did they even reach space? When weakness walked among giants. The humans emerged from their ship wearing compression suits that helped them cope with our station's gravity. Vex 7 operated at 2.4 G, standard for collective facilities. For them, it must have felt like carrying twice their body weight every moment. Their leader was a woman named Commander Sarah Voss. She stood barely 1.6 meters tall, with brown hair pulled back tight and eyes that seemed too calm for someone struggling against crushing gravity. Behind her walked 6 others, each moving carefully, their faces showing strain. I watched from the security booth as they made their way through customs. Other species paused to stare. A group of cryll workers chittered in amusement, their tentacles waving mockingly. A Tarkon merchant actually stepped in front of them, forcing the humans to walk around his massive form. Commander Voss said nothing. She simply adjusted her path and continued forward. That bothered me more than I wanted to admit. Most weak species showed fear when confronted. Humans showed patience. "They're heading to the council chamber," my assistant Kelix noted. "The trade negotiations." I nodded. "This should be entertaining. The Vor Syndicate wants exclusive rights to 3 human systems. I give the humans 10 minutes before they agree to anything just to leave." The negotiation nobody expected. The council chamber sat at Vex 7's center, a massive sphere where deals were made and broken. I had access to the security feeds, so I watched as the human delegation entered. 12 species were already seated, including representatives from the Vor Syndicate, the most aggressive trade faction in our region. Lord Kroth of the Vor stood nearly 3 meters tall. His species evolved on a high-gravity world where only the strong survived. He looked at Commander Voss the way a predator might examine prey. "Humans," Krotha's voice boomed through the chamber. "We've reviewed your territory. 3 systems rich in rare minerals. We're prepared to offer protection in exchange for exclusive mining rights." "Protection from what?" Commander Voss asked. Her voice was steady despite the gravity pressing down on her. Kroth smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "From anyone who might take advantage of your obvious limitations. The galaxy can be dangerous for fragile species." Around the chamber, several delegates made sounds that might have been laughter. I found myself leaning closer to my monitor, curious despite myself. Commander Voss stood slowly. The effort was visible, but she did it anyway. "Let me make sure I understand. You want to mine our systems, keep all the profit, and in return, you'll protect us from threats you've likely created?" The chamber went quiet. "Careful, human," Kroth growled. "You don't want to make enemies before you've made friends." "You're right," Voss replied. "We don't want enemies. That's why we're going to decline your offer." Our systems remain independent. The threat that changed everything. Krotha's expression darkened. You don't have the strength to protect 3 systems. The Vor Syndicate does. Refuse us, and we take what we want anyway. Then you'll have to take it, Boss said simply. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The entire station knew the Vor Syndicate's reputation. They had warships that could crack planets. They had soldiers who considered violence a negotiating tactic. And this human, barely able to stand under normal gravity, was refusing them? Kroth stepped forward, his massive form towering over the human commander. Your species is weak. Your bones break. Your skin tears. You need machines just to survive in normal conditions. What makes you think you can stand against us? Commander Voss tilted her head slightly. When she spoke, her voice carried across the chamber despite being soft. You're absolutely right about our physical limitations. We evolved on a world with gentle gravity, breathable air, and comfortable temperatures. Compared to you, we're incredibly fragile. She paused, and something in her eyes changed. But do you know what happens when a fragile species survives anyway? When weakness forces creativity instead of strength? We learn to think our way through problems that you solve with violence. We built tools that multiply our limited power. And most importantly, we learned that the most dangerous thing in the universe isn't strength. It's the certainty that strength is enough. The chamber remained silent. Even Kroth seemed unsure how to respond. So here's what's going to happen, Voss continued. You're going to leave our systems alone. Not because we're strong enough to stop you. But because the moment you attack us, you'll discover exactly how creative desperate humans can be. The warning nobody heeded. Kroth laughed then, a sound like thunder. Threats from a species that can barely stand? This is amusing. You have 1 cycle to reconsider. After that, we take what we want. The human delegation left the chamber slowly, fighting gravity with every step. I watched them make their way back to their ship, expecting them to flee immediately. Instead, they returned to their quarters on the station. Captain Boris summoned me to his office an hour later. Analysis? He asked. The humans are either insane or stupid, I replied. They just made enemies of the Vor Syndicate with nothing but words. When Kroth attacks their systems, it'll be over in hours. Boris nodded, his massive form settling into his chair. Agreed. Though I admit, there was something in that human's voice. Almost like she knew something we don't. What could she possibly know? I asked. We've studied their species. No natural weapons. No enhanced strength. No resistance to harsh conditions. They're children playing among giants. Perhaps, Boris rumbled. But even children can be dangerous when cornered. Increase security monitoring on the human delegation. I want to know everything they do, everyone they contact. Over the next cycle, I watched the humans carefully. They didn't panic. They didn't call for help. They simply waited in their quarters, working on data tablets and speaking quietly among themselves. It was unnerving. The Vor Syndicate mobilized. 3 warships departed for human space. Each ship carried enough firepower to devastate a planet. Kroth made sure everyone on Vex 7 knew about it. He wanted the humans to hear. Wanted them to understand what was coming. Commander Voss heard the news while eating in the station's common area. I watched her reaction on the security feed. She nodded once, as if confirming something she already knew, then returned to her meal. They're not even afraid, Kellex whispered beside me. They're in shock, I replied. But even as I said it, I wondered. The humans didn't look shocked. They looked ready. 3 days later, the Vor warships reached the first human system. And that's when everything changed. That's when we learned that physical weakness meant nothing compared to human ingenuity. That's when the Vor Syndicate, the most feared military force in 12 sectors, sent a distress signal that would echo across the galaxy. The message was simple, desperate, and terrifying: they're everywhere. How are they everywhere? We can't. Then silence, the lesson in steel. When the strong fell silent. The distress signal from the Vor warships repeated twice before cutting off completely. In my 12 cycles serving on Vex 7, I'd never heard panic in a Vor transmission. They were the predators of our galaxy, the species other races feared. But fear changes shape when you realize you're not the hunter anymore. Captain Vorith ordered every available sensor pointed toward human space. What we saw made no sense. The 3 Vor warships, each the size of a small moon, drifted dead in space. No explosions. No debris fields. Just silence. Life signs? Vorith demanded. Kellex checked the readings, his claws trembling slightly. Negative, Captain. All 3 vessels show zero biological activity. Whatever happened, it was fast. Weapon signature? I asked, pulling up tactical displays. What hit them? That's the problem, Kellex replied. Nothing hit them. No energy weapons. No kinetic strikes. No radiation. The ships are intact, but everyone aboard is just gone. The price of underestimation. Lord Croth arrived at our command deck within the hour. His usual confidence had cracks in it. Explain this, he growled, gesturing at the displays showing his floating warships. We can't, Captain Vorith admitted. The humans didn't have weapons capable of this. According to every analysis, they shouldn't have been able to scratch your shields. Then how? Crotha's voice rose. How did they kill 4,000 Vor soldiers without leaving a mark? Commander Voss's voice came from the doorway. We didn't kill them. Every head turned. The human commander stood there in her compression suit, looking as calm as the day she arrived. Behind her, the rest of her delegation waited. What are you talking about? Croft demanded, taking a threatening step toward her. Your soldiers are alive, Voss explained. At least, biologically. They're just not conscious anymore. And they won't be for approximately 6 cycles. I pulled up the bioscan data again, looking more carefully. She was right. The life signs were there, just dormant, as if every single soldier had fallen into perfect synchronized sleep. You put them to sleep? Boritha's confusion matched my own. How? The weapons we couldn't see. Commander Voss walked slowly to the main display, fighting the station's gravity with every step. When you're as physically weak as humans are, you learn to fight differently. You mentioned that our bones break easily. You're right. But broken bones heal. Do you know what doesn't heal easily? A brain exposed to precisely calibrated electromagnetic pulses. She gestured to one of her colleagues, who projected new data onto our screens. 3 months ago, we detected your surveillance on our systems. We knew you were planning something. So we prepared. What did you prepare? I asked, though part of me didn't want to know. Satellites, Voss replied. Thousands of them. Each one smaller than your fist. Each one capable of generating a specific frequency that interacts with neural tissue. We placed them throughout our systems, invisible to your scans because they were dormant. Waiting. Crotha's eyes widened. You put your own systems in a cage? We protected them, Voss corrected. When your warships entered our space and powered up weapons, our satellites detected the threat and activated. Every soldier on those ships was rendered unconscious in seconds. No pain. No death. Just sleep. The command deck fell silent. I stared at the human commander with new understanding. She hadn't been threatening the Vor Syndicate with strength. She'd been warning them that humans fight with precision, not power. The truth about fragility. Your soldiers will wake up in 6 cycles, Voss continued. When they do, they'll find their ships have been safely towed to the edge of our space. You're welcome to retrieve them. But understand this, attacking humanity is no longer a question of military strength. It's a question of whether you're willing to have your forces put to sleep every time they threaten us. Lord Croft looked like he wanted to rage, to destroy something, to reassert his dominance. But he couldn't. The humans had just demonstrated something terrifying. They'd neutralized the Vor Syndicate's most powerful warships without firing a shot. This is a violation of warfare conventions, Croft finally said, his voice tight. Is it? Voss asked. Did we kill anyone? Did we destroy property? Your soldiers are safer now than they would be after a conventional battle. We simply removed their ability to hurt others for a short time. Captain Vorith cleared his throat. Commander Voss, I must ask. How many of these satellites do you have? The human smiled faintly. Enough. That's not an answer, I said. No, Voss agreed. It's not. And it never will be. That's the point. When you're weak, uncertainty becomes your weapon. You're all wondering now, how far does our network extend? Do we have satellites around other stations? Other trade routes? Other military installations? She let the questions hang in the air. Around the command deck, I saw the same realization dawning on everyone's faces. The humans had just changed the entire balance of power, not through strength, but through doubt. The new balance. Over the following cycles, word spread throughout the collective. The species that could barely stand on our stations had defeated the Vor Syndicate without spilling blood. Trade delegations suddenly became very interested in human territories, but now it was for partnerships, not exploitation. I watched as Commander Voss negotiated new agreements. Her terms were always fair, never aggressive. She didn't demand tribute or threaten violence. She simply made it clear that attacking humanity would result in peaceful, non-lethal, but absolute defeat. The genius was elegant. You can't retaliate against an enemy who doesn't hurt you. You can't rally allies against someone who only defends. The humans had made themselves untouchable not through violence, but through the promise of safety for everyone, including their enemies. You changed everything, I told Commander Voss during one of our security briefings. Every species is re-evaluating their military doctrine. Good, she replied. Maybe they'll realize that in a universe where everyone can destroy each other, the real power belongs to whoever refuses to. The lesson we learned too late. One cycle later, I stood beside Captain Vorith as we watched the human delegation prepare to depart Vex 7. They'd completed their trade negotiations successfully. Every species that had mocked them now offered favorable terms. I underestimated them, Vorith admitted. His massive form seemed smaller somehow. I saw their physical weakness and assumed it meant they were weak. We all did, I said. But I think that was their advantage. We looked at broken bones and fragile skin and never considered broken spirits. Humans live on a gentle world, but that doesn't mean they're gentle. It means they had the luxury to develop their minds while we developed our bodies. Commander Voss approached us before boarding her ship. Thank you for your hospitality, Captain Vorith. I hope we can do business again. Commander, Vorith said slowly. May I ask you something? The satellites. How long did it take to deploy them all? Voss smiled. About 100 years. We've been preparing since the first collective scout found our world. We knew eventually someone would look at humanity and see prey. We just made sure that when they attacked, they'd learn a lesson instead of claiming a victory. As their ship departed, I watched it disappear into the darkness of space. A small vessel carrying a fragile species that had just taught the entire galaxy a truth we'd forgotten: weakness and strength are just words. What matters is what you do with what you have. The Vor Syndicate never attacked human space again. Neither did anyone else. Not because humanity threatened them, but because they promised something more valuable than military victory. They promised that even in conflict, everyone could survive. I recorded this in my official logs. Today we learned that the most dangerous species isn't the one with the sharpest claws or the strongest armor. It's the one that fights so carefully, so precisely, so thoughtfully that even their enemies live to understand their mistake. Humanity didn't conquer the galaxy with strength. They joined it with mercy backed by capability. And in doing so, they became the one species nobody dared to threaten, because threatening them meant facing a force that would defeat you without killing you, making you live with the knowledge that you lost to the weakest species in the galaxy. That's the lesson humanity taught us. That's the story I'll tell for the rest of my cycles. The day the fragile species showed us that true strength isn't about how hard you can hit, it's about how smart you fight when you can't.